For 54 days, investigators have been relentlessly following every lead. 54 days since Nancy Guthrie vanished from her Tucson home in the early morning hours of February 1, 2026. At first, everyone believed they understood what had happened: a violent struggle, a sudden attack, chaos unfolding inside the house. But newly uncovered evidence is now painting a completely different picture. The blood evidence inside Nancy's home does not tell a story of violence as once assumed. Instead, it suggests something far more unsettling: absolute control, calculated movements, and a plan carried out with cold precision. Most critically, the location where the blood was found has reshaped everything we thought we knew about those crucial 16 minutes. The gap between when her doorbell camera suddenly went dark and when her pacemaker transmitted its final signal. A blood was found inside Nancy Guthrie's home, but not where anyone expected. It wasn't spread across multiple rooms, not in the bedroom where it was believed she was taken in the middle of the night, and not in the kitchen or living room. Instead, it appeared in one precise location, a detail that may reveal exactly how she was removed from the house. A blood spatter expert, with courtroom experience across 7 states and in federal cases, has closely examined this evidence. What he uncovered challenges the core assumptions that have guided this investigation from the very beginning. His analysis points to something far more calculated: not chaos, but control; not randomness, but intent. Whoever was responsible didn't act impulsively. They knew exactly what they were doing. This video draws from publicly available information, expert analysis, investigative reporting by Ashley Banfield of News Nation, and official statements. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Some elements discussed reflect expert interpretations of physical evidence and possible investigative scenarios. So who was Nancy Guthrie? Born on June 24, 1941, in Tucson, Arizona, she lived independently for 84 years in the community she called home. While many recognize her as the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, those who knew her locally saw something more: a fiercely independent woman, sharp-minded, and deeply private. At 84, Nancy lived alone in her home in the Catalina foothills. She drove herself, managed her daily life, and remained mentally strong, according to her family. She would never just wander off, they insisted. On the night of January 31, 2026, her son-in-law Tommaso dropped her off at home around 10 p.m. after a family gathering. She walked to her door, unlocked it, went inside, and went to bed. Hours later, she was gone. By 5:54 a.m. on February 1st, friends were unable to reach her. When family members arrived, what they found raised more questions than answers: blood on the front porch, a disabled doorbell camera, and chilling footage of a masked figure approaching the house under the cover of darkness. Bang Tiang on. For weeks, all attention has been fixed on the blood outside Nancy Guthrie's home, the droplets along the walkway, the theories about what they meant. But one critical detail remained hidden from the public. Investigators knew it all along. The blood didn't begin outside. It began inside the house. And before we break down what this changes, understand this: the location of that blood may completely redefine what happened that night. A masked figure was seen at the doorbell camera at 1:47 a.m., then the feed went dark. Movement was detected inside at 2:12 a.m. Her pacemaker sent its final signal at 2:28 a.m. Just 16 minutes, a narrow window filled with unanswered questions. What happened during that time? Where did it start? How was Nancy moved from her bedroom to the front door? For weeks, the assumption was clear: a violent struggle, resistance, chaos. But the blood evidence tells a different story. According to reporting from Ashley Banfield of News Nation, blood was indeed found inside the home, but not in the bedroom, not along a path of struggle, and not scattered across multiple rooms. Bang Tiang on. The blood inside Nancy Guthrie's home was found in one precise location: the front entrance hallway, just inside the door. And what's more unsettling is this: the pattern inside perfectly matches the pattern outside. The same vertical droplets. The same undisturbed appearance. It starts inside, crosses the threshold, and continues down the walkway, ending where a vehicle was likely waiting. This revelation changes everything. If the attack began in the bedroom, why is there no blood there? No trail through the house. No signs of a struggle. The questions only deepen. To understand this, Ashley Banfield turned to Dr. Peter Valentine, a forensic science expert who has testified in courts across multiple states. His analysis points to something chilling. The stains are drip patterns, blood falling purely by gravity, not force. No signs of impact, no spray, no chaos. Just controlled, vertical drops. And that distinction is critical. Because patterns like this don't come from violence in motion, they come from something slow, deliberate, and disturbingly precise. Bang tiang on. There are no footprints, no smears, no signs of movement through the blood, nothing to suggest chaos or struggle. The droplets are clean, circular, and vertical, indicating the source was directly above and moving slowly, controlled enough to let gravity do the work. Even more telling, the droplets remain completely undisturbed. No one stepped through them, no one disrupted the scene. But the most revealing detail lies in what experts call satellite spatter. Tiny secondary droplets formed when new drops fall into blood already on the surface. This only happens when the source stays in one place long enough for multiple drops to accumulate. In other words, there was a pause. At the threshold of the front door, something, or someone, stopped. Not briefly, but for what Dr. Valentine described as a meaningful amount of time. Long enough for blood to drip, pool, and create those secondary patterns. This wasn't a rushed escape. It suggests a deliberate moment, opening the door, adjusting grip, preparing for what came next. And that detail changes everything. Because it reveals a chilling truth. Whoever took Nancy wasn't panicked, wasn't careless. They were calm, controlled, and fully in command of every second. One question has sparked intense debate. Was the blood coming directly from Nancy, or from an object carrying her blood? Some theories suggested a weapon, that the dripping came from something the perpetrator held. But Dr. Valentine's analysis challenges that idea entirely. And if blood were dripping from an object, the pattern would change over time. The source would run out, spacing between drops would increase, and the flow would become inconsistent. But that's not what investigators see here. The droplets remain steady, uniform, a continuous pattern that points to an active source. Not an object, a person who was still bleeding. DNA testing confirmed the blood belongs to Nancy. That was never the mystery. The real question is what the pattern reveals. And according to forensic analysis, for those droplets to fall in clean, vertical lines, nothing could be blocking them. No clothing absorbing it, no obstruction interrupting the path, just a direct fall from source to ground. That detail is critical. It suggests the bleeding area, likely her head or face, was positioned directly above the floor, allowing blood to drip straight down. But here's where it becomes unsettling. If Nancy were moving on her own, that pattern might make sense. Yet we know a masked figure approached her home. We know she was taken from her bed. So how do you explain a controlled, vertical drip pattern in a situation that was anything but normal? Emotion was detected inside the house. Movement that strongly suggests someone navigating through the interior. But this wasn't Nancy walking on her own. The evidence points to something far more disturbing. She was being taken. The question is how she was moved in a way that produced such a precise blood pattern. Based on the evidence, Ashley Banfield proposed a chilling possibility. Nancy may have been carried over the perpetrator's shoulder. In that position, her head and upper body would hang downward behind him. If she was bleeding from the face or head, the blood would fall straight down, forming the clean vertical droplets seen along the path. It wouldn't be disturbed by footsteps, because it was falling behind him as he moved forward. At the front door, everything changes. The perpetrator appears to have stopped, likely to open the heavy door while carrying her. During that pause, blood continued dripping in one spot, forming the distinct satellite spatter. A slight shift in her body, perhaps pressure against her diaphragm, could explain a subtle variation in the pattern at that exact point. And when Dr. Valentine was asked about this theory, his response was clear. It's as plausible as any explanation so far. And he added a critical detail: if Nancy was carried this way, the blood wouldn't just hit the ground, it would have landed on the perpetrator's back. A detail that may matter more than anyone initially realized. And when people try to clean up after a crime, they focus on what they can see: their hands, their shoes, the front of their clothes. But they rarely think about their back. It's out of sight, and often overlooked. If Nancy was carried over the perpetrator's shoulder, as the evidence suggests, then blood could have soaked into the fabric between the shoulder blades, a place he may never have realized needed cleaning. And that detail could still exist. On a jacket in a closet, a shirt left in a hamper, even discarded clothing that might still be recovered. This is the kind of overlooked evidence that breaks cases open, the trace someone didn't know they left behind. But it raises another critical question. If Nancy was attacked in her bedroom, why does the blood only appear near the front entrance? According to Dr. Valentine, this assumption is misleading. Blood doesn't always appear instantly after an injury. It takes time to surface, to soak through clothing, to build enough volume to drip. In other words, the absence of blood in the bedroom doesn't mean nothing happened there. It may simply mean the bleeding hadn't started yet. The same principle applies here. Nancy may have been injured in her bedroom, but the bleeding didn't immediately reveal itself. It could have been absorbed by her hair or clothing at first. As she was carried through the house, the blood slowly built up, until it finally reached the point of dripping at the front entrance. And that detail makes the timeline even more unsettling. It suggests she was controlled inside her bedroom without leaving visible evidence, then moved through her home, past the kitchen, down the hallway, without a single drop falling. Only at the doorway did the blood begin to appear. That level of precision isn't accidental. It isn't panic. It points to someone calm, deliberate, and experienced. According to sources cited by Ashley Banfield, when deputies first arrived on the morning of February 1st, they believed this might be a missing elderly person, someone who had wandered off. But that assumption didn't last long. More experienced investigators quickly realized something was wrong. The back door wasn't just unlocked, it was wide open. And while Nancy was known to sometimes leave doors unlocked, this was different. This wasn't oversight. This was a scene that didn't fit a simple disappearance. In the Catalina foothills, leaving a door unlocked isn't unusual. Many residents feel safe enough to do so. But there's a critical difference between unlocked and wide open. An unlocked door is still closed, hidden unless tested. A wide open door is exposed, visible, and intentional. When investigators entered through the front, they could see straight through the house to the back, where the patio door stood fully open. This detail may reveal the entire path. The perpetrator likely entered through that rear door, knowing it would be unsecured. He moved through the house, reached Nancy's bedroom, and subdued her without creating immediate, visible blood evidence. Then he carried her back through the same path, toward the front entrance. Somewhere along that movement, the bleeding began to surface. By the time he reached the doorway, it was dripping. At the threshold, he paused, long enough for blood to collect. He opened the door, adjusted his position, then stepped outside. The trail continued down the walkway and stopped where a vehicle was likely waiting. That's where Nancy was placed inside, and where the trail ends. Even without interior footage, the pattern of blood maps out a chilling sequence: movement, control, precision. But it also raises a deeper concern. As Dr. Valentine warned, investigators often find only what they're looking for. If the scene was initially treated as a violent struggle, could critical signs of a controlled abduction have been overlooked? The home was released back to the family roughly 30 hours later. And when asked if that was appropriate, Dr. Valentine's response left little room for doubt. "I would have held that house for as long as possible." That was Dr. Valentine's direct response, and it speaks to something critical. In his experience as both a forensic scientist and a detective, cases like Nancy Guthrie's are rare. This is not a case driven by witnesses or obvious suspects. This is one where the forensic evidence itself is leading the investigation. In most cases, evidence supports what detectives already suspect. But in a small percentage, roughly 5 to 10%, the physical evidence is the investigation. No clear motive. No direct leads. Just the scene and what it reveals. In those situations, every detail matters. Every surface, every trace, every overlooked fragment. That's why the decision to release the home after just 30 hours raises serious concerns. When evidence is the only path forward, you preserve the scene, revisit it, and process it again as new questions emerge. Because once it's gone, it's gone. One example stands out. The welcome mat at Nancy's front door remained in place for weeks, exposed to the elements and to contamination. According to Dr. Valentine, that mat could have held microscopic evidence, fibers, soil, debris, linking a suspect to the scene. But instead of being immediately collected and preserved, it sat there, vulnerable. And within that missed opportunity could have been the one detail that changed everything. The bracket holding Nancy's Nest doorbell camera became another critical detail. The perpetrator removed the camera, meaning he had to touch and handle that bracket directly. If he had saliva on his gloves, even indirectly, it could have transferred to that surface. Yet investigators didn't collect the bracket until nearly 3 weeks later, time that may have allowed crucial DNA evidence to degrade. Dr. Valentine describes these as unforced errors, mistakes made not from lack of skill, but from pressure. Multiple agencies, intense media coverage, and the involvement of a high-profile family can push investigators to act quickly instead of methodically. And in cases like this, speed can come at a cost. Early on, Sheriff Chris Nanos acknowledged that pressure. He admitted that, in hindsight, he likely would have held the scene longer. It was a rare moment of reflection, an understanding that time may have been lost. But weeks later, his tone shifted. In a more recent interview, he stated he had no regrets, not about his team, and not about releasing the scene when they did. The earlier hesitation was replaced with confidence. Dr. Valentine didn't address that contradiction directly, but his broader warning remains clear. When investigations are shaped by pressure instead of patience, the smallest missed detail can become the one thing that keeps the truth out of reach. The blood evidence offers one more crucial insight: the nature of Nancy's injury. The volume seen is significant, but not overwhelming. According to Dr. Valentine, this wasn't a catastrophic wound that would cause immediate death. It was serious, yes, an injury that required medical attention, but one that could be survivable. And that distinction matters. Because while we can see what was happening in that moment, we don't know what came after. There may have been other injuries, unseen, not bleeding externally. We don't know if she received help, or what happened once she was taken. The blood tells only part of the story, a single moment frozen in time. The uncertainty is reflected in two very different perspectives. Nancy's family has spoken about bringing her home for a final resting place, suggesting they believe she didn't survive. But Sheriff Nanos has made a direct plea: let her go. Take her to a hospital. Drop her off. A statement that leaves open the possibility she could still be alive. For 54 days, that question has remained unanswered, and the blood evidence cannot resolve it. What it does reveal is this: at the moment she was taken, Nancy was injured, bleeding, but not beyond saving. There's one final detail. The blood trail ends at a specific point along the walkway, a point consistent with a vehicle. Dr. Valentine believes that's where Nancy was placed inside. And when her position changed, from being carried to being set down, the dripping stopped. Either the wound was no longer exposed, or someone made sure it didn't continue. Before Nancy was placed into the vehicle, the blood was still dripping, and some of it almost certainly went with her. And that detail could be decisive. Blood is incredibly difficult to fully remove from a car. Even when the visible stains are gone, the chemical traces remain invisible, but still detectable with forensic testing. And no matter how thoroughly someone cleans, those hidden traces can survive. And if found, they would link Nancy directly to that vehicle at the exact moment she was bleeding. A powerful piece of evidence, one that could connect not just the car, but the person behind it. That's why, according to Dr. Valentine, finding the vehicle is critical. The blood pattern doesn't just suggest it exists, it confirms it. Somewhere, that vehicle is out there, carrying evidence that may still be intact. The FBI has been canvassing the neighborhood, collecting surveillance footage, trying to reconstruct which vehicles were present that night. If they identify the right one, the next step is clear: test for latent blood, match the DNA, and build the case. But 54 days in, there's been no arrest. No vehicle publicly identified. The investigation appears to be at a standstill, waiting for that one forensic breakthrough. And with each passing day, the trail grows colder. Yet the blood evidence reveals one more chilling truth. The pattern, clean, vertical, undisturbed, doesn't reflect panic or chaos. It points to someone controlled, composed, moving through every step with precision. The sequence now appears chillingly deliberate. The intruder likely entered through an unlocked back door, moved directly to Nancy's bedroom, and subdued her without creating immediate visible blood evidence. Then, step by step, he carried her through the house, slow, controlled, allowing the blood to drip behind him in clean vertical patterns. At the front threshold, he paused, long enough for blood to pool beneath him before stepping and continuing toward the waiting vehicle. This is not the behavior of someone acting on impulse. It reflects planning, preparation, and control. Even the masked figure seen at 1:47 a.m. appears to move with awareness, turning away from the camera, as if he already knew exactly where it was. A former Pima County investigator noted that this kind of awareness doesn't happen in the moment. It comes from prior surveillance. And if that's true, then this didn't begin that night. It may have started weeks earlier. Time spent studying routines, identifying vulnerabilities, planning the entry and exit. And the blood evidence inside the home reinforces that conclusion. This was not chaos. It was calculated. But beyond the analysis, there's a human cost. For 54 days, Nancy Guthrie's family has lived in uncertainty, not knowing if she's alive, what she endured, or if they will ever have answers. And the discovery of blood inside her home only deepens that pain, because it confirms she was hurt in the one place she should have been safest. Savannah Guthrie described her mother as being taken from her bed in the middle of the night, an image that has stayed with everyone following this case. And now, the blood evidence supports that reality. Nancy was inside her home, in the place she felt safest, when someone entered, moved through the house, and carried her out while she was bleeding. And from that moment, she was gone. Her family has since offered a reward of over $1.2 million for information leading to her safe return. The FBI has deployed a task force. Local authorities continue to work the case. And yet, 54 days later, the answers remain out of reach. The blood evidence has revealed part of the story, where the bleeding began, the path from inside to outside, the indication that she was carried, not walking or dragged. But the most important questions remain unanswered. Where is Nancy? Who took her? And why? Dr. Valentine's warning echoes over all of it. In high-pressure cases, mistakes happen, and those mistakes complicate everything. Decisions made quickly, scenes released too soon, evidence not collected immediately. Each one can close off a path to the truth. And now, weeks later, those early choices may be shaping the outcome. Because in a case where evidence is everything, even the smallest missed detail can mean the difference between answers and silence. This is a case built on forensic evidence, and yet, the way that evidence may have been handled could have changed everything. Dr. Valentine explains that every home tells a story, not just of what happened, but of what's normal for the person who lives there. The key is spotting what's been disrupted, but you can't see what's changed until you first understand what was there before. That requires patience. Walking through every room, documenting every detail, letting the scene speak, instead of forcing a theory onto it. He compares it to reading a book. If you skip ahead, you lose the context, the meaning, the subtle clues that make everything else make sense. In Nancy's case, the question becomes unavoidable. Was the scene processed with that level of care? Were investigators looking for quiet signs of control, or only obvious signs of violence? Was every surface examined, or were conclusions formed too quickly under pressure? We don't know. But releasing the home after just 30 hours raises concerns that speed may have taken priority over method. And when that happens, critical evidence can be missed, sometimes forever. But beyond all the analysis, there's something more important to remember. Nancy Guthrie is not just evidence, not just a case. She is a person. And at the center of all of this, a life still waiting for answers. Nancy Guthrie isn't just a name in a case file. She's a mother, a grandmother, a woman who spent 84 years building a life in the community she loved. She had routines, friendships, a home where she felt safe, and a family who cared deeply for her. Just 54 days ago, she was asleep in her own bed. Within hours, someone entered that home, took her from that bed, and carried her away while she was bleeding. Since then, her family has lived in constant uncertainty, not knowing if she's alive, not knowing what she endured, not knowing if they will ever see her again. Savannah Guthrie continues to appear on television each morning, but the weight of that unknown is impossible to hide. And for Nancy's grandchildren, life goes on, with a space that may never be filled. The blood evidence has given us part of the story. It shows where the bleeding began, how she was moved, and what it reveals about the person responsible. Calm, controlled, deliberate. But it doesn't answer the questions that matter most. Where is Nancy? Who took her? Why? Those answers may still exist, in a vehicle that hasn't been found, in clothing that was never fully cleaned, in footage that hasn't been discovered, or in the mind of the person who walked into her home that night. For weeks, the focus has been on what we don't know. But now, we know something real. We know the pattern. We know what it means. And in a case like this, every piece of truth matters, because any one of them could be the detail that finally leads to Nancy. The blood evidence is only one piece of Nancy's story, a story that deserves to be fully uncovered. Not just for the investigation, but for Nancy, for Savannah, for a family that has spent 54 days waiting for answers that still haven't come. This isn't just about what happened. It's about making sure the truth is found. Because incomplete answers aren't enough, not in a case like this. If you believe this case deserves real resolution, follow Crime Uncovered. Stay with us as we continue to break down the evidence, the details, and the questions others overlook. And tell us what you think. What really happened in those 16 minutes between the bedroom and the front door? Because here, we don't settle for uncertainty. We push for clarity, for truth, for Nancy, for justice.